here. Hopefully there'll be some more folks just popping in and out if they're able. I know a lot of guys are on shift today. So I just wanted to say thanks to everyone for taking some time out of your day to take part in this and have this conversation. If you would, in the chat, just put your name and your local so that we can kind of a easier way to introduce ourselves and just trying to go around and have everybody introduce themselves. And then it'll help me keep track of who was here as well. So since I announced that I was running for this position back in January, I've been really making a big effort to talk to as many of our local leaders around the state as I can. At this point, I've talked to all but 5 of our local presidents around the state, and I'm still working on chasing those last 5 down to have some conversations. And I've met with half of our locals. I've met with 24 of our 48 locals. I've got a few more on the schedule, but my goal is to talk with everybody and as many of our members across the state as I possibly can. With these conversations, one common theme that has come up is a desire for more communication and frequent communication between the MPFF and our local leaders around the state. And this is kind of a test run of something like that. If anything is good that's come out of COVID, it's that we're realizing the potential of virtual meetings like this. And my plan is to have virtual quarterly district meetings to help facilitate some of that communication and remove as many barriers as possible to get us basically all in the same space like this. I think it's extremely important for our membership as well as other locals to be aware of issues that your locals are facing or might be facing or something like that. One of the most valuable resources I had as a local president was other locals that I could call and bounce ideas off of or share information or pick their brain a little bit. And that was honestly one of the biggest resources that we have. And hopefully with having these virtual meetings, it'll allow some of these locals to build those relationships, start to get to know who each other are, to make it easier to reach out to somebody if you have questions and work together on some of this stuff. So it also ensure that we're getting access to the resources that we currently have or that we'll hopefully have in the future as the MPFF, but also tie in our locals into DVP Thornburg and working through the IFF resources that are available. And if that's the case where we're working on an issue and it's determined that the IFF, in DC has a resource that's more appropriate for what we're doing, I'm not just going to pass people off and say good luck with it. If we're working on an issue, I'm going to stick with you until we get it resolved. And with this style meeting, it's easy to just send out an email and invite people to do this sort of thing. We can have them on specific topics. If we want to have one on negotiations to see what people are getting offered in their contracts, or we talked a little bit just a second ago about fill the boot and different ways, and our locals are thinking outside the box in order to be more successful with things like that, or really any other issue that comes up. This is an avenue for us to use. So I think it's something that we'll definitely use more in the future as well. For me, as of April 9th, I'm no longer the president of Local 101. I chose not to run for re-election so that I could focus on this campaign and hopefully the MPFF president afterward. I just felt like with the amount of commitment it was to being the president and the amount of commitment that I'm putting into this, it wasn't fair to either my members or members across the state for me to try and split and have one foot in each side of the things there. So and if I'm going to do either one of them, I want to be able to commit to it 100% and make sure I do it right. So with that, I just want to open it up to questions or discussion. If you have a question, you can just come off mute or raise your hand or type it in the chat box. And I'd be happy to answer anything that I can. So. One of the things that have come up, in some of the conversations when I've been talking to locals is, living up in Duluth with the political action being really important to this position, how I spend the time down at the Capitol in order to be successful. My plan is to take time off, take our scheduled vacations up here with the shifts that we work. We get 17 days off in a chunk. So my plan would be to talk to Chris and find out when the most pressing time periods are during the legislative session for me to be down there, and take vacation at that time. I've already got a couple of places that I can stay while I'm down there. So I've got, if I have to spend a few days down there, that's not going to be an issue. And my goal is to spend as much time as I need to down there for us to be successful. So it's really not that bad of a drive to jump in my truck and head down there. So.
Pete, this is Rick.
Yeah.
As a board member, one of the biggest concerns that we've had over the last, probably 5-6 years has been the finances of the MPFF. Money coming in, revenue coming in, expenses going out. Any thoughts on what you can do to help stabilize that? Because that seems, you've been to the last few conventions. That seems to be a point of contention amongst kind of a split between the metro area, the big locals, and then the smaller locals that, they're not really paying that much. And it's, dues increase to them is not a big deal, but to Minneapolis, St. Paul, yourself, that starts to add up.
Yeah. It seems like with the last couple of conventions, things have kind of evened out and we're on a pretty good track, if you will, and maintaining that track. One of the things that I want to dig into a little bit more to work on or look into is eliminating the office right now. Best I can tell, we probably spend between $10,000 and $12,000 a year on our office, and it doesn't get a ton of use. I know, Minneapolis and St. Paul both have, union halls or office space available if we need it for a particular reason that we could hopefully work something out with them to use, or figure out something else. But as far as having a big dedicated office like that, I think that we can save a lot of money by just eliminating that and, figuring out what issues. I know, we have a fair amount of stuff there that we'd have to find somewhere to store it and that sort of thing. But that's one way that we could, to some of these things that, ideas that we have or that have kind of come out of some of these conversations, that money would be used as could be used as seed money to help get some of those things off the ground.
Okay.
And I'm not afraid to spend money is the thing. But I'm also I'm not going to waste money. As a local president up here, 8 years ago, when I took over for Eric Simonson, the mentality up here and with the support of our members was we fought everything. Any minor contract violation, we fought it. Anything that possibly, no matter the size of the infraction, no matter the cost, if you will, on principle, we fought it. And when I took over, I maintained that same mentality that we didn't let anything slide. I want to say that when I took over, our reserves were the last one that I could find in my records. It was a couple years after I took over. Our reserves were at around $145,000. When I left office earlier this month, we were at $315,000 in reserves, or somewhere right around there. So I'm going to do everything I can to save money, but at the same time, I'm not afraid to spend it if it's for the benefit of our members. So I think there's a lot of legwork that we can do as opposed to hiring attorneys or everything else. If we're willing to put the time into it and do all that legwork and hire them for only the very specific things that we need them to hire for, our dollars go a lot further. On that same line, one of the things that I've proposed or talked about a little bit, and through feedback with other members, is developing a fire training aspect of the MPFF, and whether that's formed through our current MPFF leadership structure, whether it's through a foundation or an LLC, whatever we determine is going to be best. Something that over time, once we build it out and develop it, that we'd hopefully be able to use it to deliver training across the state, across the region, wherever else that we could possibly go to do it. And you look at Fire Nuggets or Nozzle Forward or Fire by Trade or these, grassroots training organizations that have sprung up. They've got super passionate, good instructors, but they're not giving their time away for free. So if we were able to put together something like that and have a good enough product where we could get hired out to deliver some of these courses, that's another potential way for us to bring revenue back into our organization that we'd then be able to reinvest in our membership, reinvest in more training opportunities on the union side of things, reinvest in building out that legal defense fund so that it's there if our locals need it. One of the other things that I'd like to look into with that is developing a fund. So if we have a member somewhere or, that needs to go to the Center for Excellence, we can have a grant program set up to help offset the travel costs or the out-of-pocket costs or remove some of those barriers so that if a member needs to go, they can go. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah.
There's one thing, I'm going to try and share my screen and show you guys that I've been working on putting together, similar to, we've every now and then one of our local leaders will send out an email asking for a specific piece of information, whether it be contract information or something like that. And in lines with a contract negotiations toolkit or resource, I put together, and this is just a rough draft right now. See if I can figure out where this is. All right, but it's basically a questionnaire. Can you guys see that? Hopefully.
Yep.
So basically, it's a questionnaire that I'd send out to our locals, and get them time to fill out. And then when they get it back, what it's going to do is it's going to condense down our contracts into the real meat and potatoes, if you will. So as I scroll through here, department information, your local name and number, who the contact information is, the size of your local. I think that that's important just because a local, with 10 members is going to negotiate a contract a little different than a local with, 120 members or something like that, so that you get an idea of what size that contract, what size local that contract represents if you're looking to find comparables for what you're looking to negotiate. What work schedule you have, what FLSA cycle you run, with wages, what ranks are covered under your contract, and kind of how they're coded out. Base pay per month for those positions that are covered, and then wage increases per year. I know some people had contracts right now that go a couple of years into the future, but in essence, what you would do is if you got for 2020, if you got, or let's just do 2025 since it's at the top there, you got a 1.5% raise, you'd click one, and I've got to run it in preview, but you'd click 1 and 1.5, and the idea being that as we get these back, we'd be able to develop wage trends for all of our departments across the state to see, over the last 15 or 20 years, how much, where your wages dipped, where they came back up, how far they came back up, how far, as compared to other locals in your area or other locals of your size. Other pay, like for example, in Duluth, we get EMT pay, we get special duty pay, we get roll call pay. I know some departments have, special assignment pay, whether it be hazmat or something like that, or hazard pay or paramedic pay, things like that make up that total compensation package. Because a lot of times, if you look at just the base wage, with ours, if you add up all of our other pay items, it's close to 10% or more that doesn't show up just in our base pay in our contract. And then the specific contract language that goes with it, room for comments, obviously, retirement contributions, if you have a department that contributes, above and beyond what you get for para, whether you get a match for a 457 or a Roth, or have those available, retiree health care or retiree health insurance contributions and what those look like, what your current health insurance looks like. Do you run a high deductible plan? Do you run a self-insured plan? Some hybrid of the two? What your premiums are, deductibles, max out of pockets. Again, this helps give a better total package or total view of what your contract looks like. That'll be a lot easier for other locals to access and work off of than, pulling out a 40-page document. More information on cafeteria plans, health savings accounts, VIVAs if you have one of those, and then the specific language out of your contract that goes with it. Same thing for your pharmacy benefit. Same thing for your dental coverage. Any other specifics that go with it. Leave, sick leave. Is it eligible to be paid out? In Duluth, we get a lot of sick leave. We get what equates to 6 months a year of sick leave, but we never get paid out on any of it. So, and I know other places, once you hit a certain threshold, they'll pay you out beyond that. Same thing with vacation time. Do you have a vacation leave that's eligible to be paid out, or how it's eligible to be paid out? The contract that's specific, language that's specific. Other leave, personal time, PTO, etc. Non-paid leave, are you eligible for a leave of absence? Is it covered under your contract? Reimbursements. This is something that I think, in lieu of wages, sometimes is a good way to get some benefits or get some benefit for your members. So reimbursements, are any of these covered under your contract? Education and training, health and fitness, mileage, uniform, things like that, you can start picking apart and improving your contract. And it's a lot of times cities or whoever you're negotiating with are more apt to allow for some of this versus wanting to just do a straight wage increase. Safety, health, and wellness. Do you have minimum staffing in your contract? Extended firefighter physical in your contract, or expanded firefighter physical, on-duty physical fitness, turnout gear, turnout washers, use of beds and rest and things like that. And then the specific contract language. Spot to upload your contract, and then just if there's other specific items that weren't really covered previously that you want to add that you feel is, beneficial in your contract, that's not covered somewhere else. The idea being that if we get enough of those back, and once you get those back, with the Google Forms like that, it kind of graphs it out for you, but you can also export it into an Excel spreadsheet and kind of break those things out so that would be available instead of just the raw document of a searchable contract or something like that. You can, pull 3 or 4 comparables before you go into negotiations. It seems like that would be valuable. The feedback that I've got, is there other things that you guys would like to see on something like that? Feel free to, let me know what you're thinking.
Your list is pretty thorough.
I agree.
So, I mean, there's
contract or two before.
What's that?
It's like you've negotiated a contract or two before.
A couple. There's some have been, it's never been easy. I'll put it that way. It's always, you feel like you're banging your head against the wall, punching each other in the face over 0.5% for 6 months. But so if there's sometimes you can find, those little things that you can start making tweaks in. One of the things that we negotiated a contract for 2021. We ended up taking 0 in wages, but we did get expanded language on, what we were able to leverage was vacation sellback. So you can sell back vacation for cash that we weren't able to do before. You can, we used to have a cap on our vacation balances. So if you got above a certain hours in your bank, you forfeited it. Now that money or those hours that are above that certain cap get converted to cash and put into your retiree health savings account. We expanded our use of bed language. The language in our contract before is we could use our beds from 1 to 5 on weekends and holidays, and 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. every other day. We added a sentence that said, use of beds will be allowed as duties allow. So, Tuesday, we don't have training. We're not on any calls. The guys are tired from working the night before or whatever. And they can go use their beds without feeling like the chief's going to come and yell at them for some reason. Certain things like that are no cost to them. But we were able to say, if you want us to sell this to our membership for 0%, these are the things that have to be in there, or else they're just going to vote it down and we're going to be back in the same exact spot. So, but I think there's, having a meeting like this specifically devoted to negotiations, where if, we're going into negotiations and you guys just got done, it's city administrators talk just like we talk. What were you able to squeeze out of your people? Were you able to raise the, insurance stuff? Were you able to shift more costs onto the employee? Were you able to divide them and do you guys can keep it, but everybody hired after you doesn't get it. So they're already doing that, and there's no reason why we shouldn't start doing that as well, so that we're on the same page and can start, bouncing those same arguments back across the table that we find successful. So, but I think something like that, where you can pull those comparables that are very specific, that match what you're looking for, match what the size of your department. If you're in the metro area, or if you're in, greater Minnesota or whatever, I think there'd be some value in there, and it wouldn't take hours of scrolling through, 1,100 pages of contracts to try and decipher some of that stuff. If anybody wants to share, what do your guys' contracts look like for 2021?
We did a 2.5% raise with a 1% COLA on a 1-year contract because the city was afraid of COVID. But then after we recently discovered that they got another lump sum from the American Heroes Act or whatever Biden just passed, we have a little bit more ammo to come back to the table and get a 2-year contract and make up the other portion of our COLA that they shorted us on in comparison to the rest of the city.
Nice. I know Paul's answer when it comes to where he's at with his contract.
Yeah, we're fixing to go fight again on the 12th.
Paul's with Inver Grove there. He's in the process of negotiating their first contract, and is running into the same things that, we all kind of deal with at different points in negotiating contracts. But I'm sure getting that first one locked down is a big enough challenge without running into roadblocks with chiefs and administrators and everything else. But
yeah, we'll probably end up settling our wages with what the cops did. That's not the issue. The issue is a lot of the, I don't know, we call it quality of life stuff. Where our assistant chief mainly doesn't want to give an iota of control over anything. So we're trying to establish rest time, shift bidding, any of that stuff. That like you said, that no cost stuff. That's the tough sell for us. We asked for 3% just so we can leverage down into some of that stuff that's costless. But we're pretty well to understand that we're going to settle at where our cops did, which is 2.5 this year and 2.75 this year next year on a 2-year contract. That's providing we get our contract done this year, which is a tall order considering we submitted a proposal 6 months ago now, and they were at the table once and weren't prepared for it and took off. They've been away for about 2 months coming up with a counter proposal that basically is no to everything that we have from likely our assistant chief. So it's
a lost waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, right now we don't have any. I mean, we're at the whim of whatever he wants us doing. So it's one of those things where we're like working till 11:30, 12 at night, just piddly crap that needs to be done. And, we don't have language for rest time. We don't have language for downtime, and we don't have leverage because, that's management rights to have us doing this and that. And, they throw our wages in our face. Oh, you guys make this much, so you should be you should be up all night. You should be this, you should be that. It's a crappy atmosphere, and negotiating a new contract with at least, our chief's not so bad, but she kind of follows the lead of the assistant chief, and he's very not pro labor and not pro IAFF, and it's for a real tough thing. And he wants to take away our clothing allowances. I mean, everything. It's like bare bones. Whatever they have to give us, they want to give us. The rest of these he said no to, and it's just, it's, I know, you and I texted back and forth a bit about it, Pete. It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, we go back on the 12th, and it's just anticipating a war, that's going to go on for, probably won't settle the contract till 22 anyway. So it's frustrating.
Yeah, no, the more in that initial contract, the more that, quality of life or working condition stuff that you can get in there, it'll pay dividends in the long run. I mean, to be honest, that's some of the hardest stuff that we have to get, try and get in our contract is the stuff that doesn't cost them anything, but it takes power away from management. Damon's heard me give this spiel to new hires when they get out to our station or whatever. But it's, we sit at the table and we talk about the department and who really runs the department and who looks out for the firefighters and that type of thing. And, you start talking, we've given our administrators the chance, and sat down with them and said, if you do this, this, and this, you'll get more support. It's better for our members. You'll get more support. And they refuse to do it. So then we negotiate those changes in, and they get all mad about it. But as I'm talking, I talk about power chips, right? And I reach over and I grab, the salt shaker. And as we're talking about other things that the union is looking out for the members on, whether it be turnout gear. For years, we'd love to get you second sets of turnout gear. We don't have the money. So we negotiated into the contract, reach out and grab the hot sauce, and by the end of the conversation, I've got all the condiments and everything from the table piled up in front of me. And what's left on the chief side of the table is, a couple of Parmesan packets and a toothpick, because they don't realize that if they treat their members or treat their employees, I guess they're not their members, better, they're going to be more loyal. It's going to be a better place to work. And the more of those power chips that you can accumulate in the long run, the more influence you're going to have over the direction of that department, the more influence you're going to have and support you're going to have from your members. And the more cohesive of a union you're going to be. And that's the stuff that they, are in Duluth. The Chiefs really don't have shit. It's when it really comes down to most of the conversations, it's the union sitting on one side of the table, the city administrator and the city attorney sitting on the other side of the table, and the Chiefs just kind of fumbling off to the side. I mean, Chiefs aren't even involved in our negotiation process. Like, we negotiate with the city administration, and then they go and talk to the Chiefs afterwards and say, here's what we agreed to. Or they ask the Chiefs, and the Chiefs get all upset and can't explain why they're upset. So the more you can lock that stuff down now, as frustrating as it is, it'll pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah, the problem here is one of the problems, there's quite a few problems. One of the big problems is we organized, a year and, something like 15 months ago or 16 months ago, something like that. But our firefighters just started working shifts like 5 years ago, and both our chiefs, our fire chief's been here 13 years and in that position for that amount of time. She was an outside hire. And our assistant chief has been on for, I want to say something around 28 to 30, maybe 31, 32, something like that. I don't remember, but he's been the assistant chief for 16, and neither one of them came from career departments or anything like that. So they don't really have, a grasp on how the shift thing works. Each of the, there's 3 of us shift captains that make up the bulk of the local, an inspector who also, also within the local, and then our fire marshal. And the only one out of the four who hasn't worked shift in another fire department is the fire marshal. We've been with the city for like 35, 40 years, something like that. He's the longest tenured employee in the city. We actually took his position from AFSCME. But without that understanding and firsthand knowledge, I think, of how it's done in fire departments that are already established, where we're trying to go, there's no point of reference there. So it's okay, my way or the highway, and take. And that's what we experience now. It's it's a take type of thing, and you should just be happy to have a job. So it's tough, and right now we have, we went in on a safer grant again next year. So for us, there's a bit of pressure on us now to get this negotiated in case we get extra positions, so that, we get the 9 more people we're trying to hire. They're not just walking into a firing squad of chiefs, and
yeah,
we can get that squared away, hopefully, if and when that happens. But, this first, it's been a nightmare so far, honestly.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to get a first one done like that, but especially with that much pushback.
Yeah. It'll get done. It's just one of them things,
Yeah.
We kind of, the first it's funny because the first round of negotiations, one of the things we're trying to really push on is the three of us in the shift captain spots. We don't get offered overtime. We don't get the option for overtime. If they, for one of us staff, they just throw a part-time person in the spot, which, we understand budgetary, all that crap that they want to throw at us. But at the same time, like, you're not even offering. And that was their biggest piece of pushback when we came to it. And they had the assumption that, oh yeah, we're just going to eliminate that language. And myself and the other couple guys negotiated, we kind of dug our heels in and fought that off right away. And that they weren't real happy about it. And that's when they kind of pulled away and said, well, we have to organize a comparables instead. So, they thought they were just going to roll over us, based on, oh yeah, you want to help the city, so you got to help our budget. You want to help the part-time people, get experience so that you can have succession plans. So, yeah, I get all that, but I also, get that you establish a standard of what you want running your shifts, and you had a competitive hiring process to select 3 full-time employees for that. You need to, do your best diligence to keep those positions filled at that standard you established as much as practicable. And that's the kind of side we're coming from. We were kind of able to fight that off. So we had a little bit of success, but it kind of was one of those things where, I don't mean to take over the conversation. It's just, like I said, you and I texted about it a little bit earlier this week. And it was a vent fest. So that's kind of, maybe someone can empathize with my struggles a little bit here, our struggles a little bit here.
Hang in there, man. It was similar when I was down in Cottage Grove. It was just fighting tooth and nail for everything. But eventually the city just caved. But I don't know that'll happen in your instance.
We'll see. Good thing is the almost everybody in our union, save for the fire marshal, is going to outlast the current administration. So
start threatening to bring in some muscle. Talk to your DVSR. We can get Jerry Biggert in there or Papa T.
Yeah. Oh, it's thoughts in the head.
But right on.
I digress. Sorry for taking over your show.
No, that's exactly the point of this, is for other people to hear what everybody else is going through, and if they have any insights to toss up, or, I think we've all can empathize because we've been there. It's amazing what they choose to fight over and dig in over, and when you've already got a full contract set up that you can, take a little piece. If you're starting from scratch and trying to get all that, it's hard to give up one thing to get another thing. And, that's why trying to get as much of it in this first contract, as frustrating as it's going to be, will definitely set you up for success in the future. So One of the other issues that has gotten brought up a few times meeting with different locals is has to do with political endorsements. Whether they didn't like the endorsements that we've made in the past or how those endorsements were made in the past, and wanted, just my take on how I would, try and conduct those in the future. I think opening up our process a little bit and communicating with our local leaders, similar to what we're doing here today, I think it will be important, regardless of who we endorse or who we don't endorse. I think it's important to have some of those conversations, and acknowledging that we're never going to make everybody happy. I mean, our local, we have people from the very far left, we have people on the very far right, and we have people everywhere in between, and people who don't give a shit. So acknowledging that, we're not going to make everybody happy. That being said, we have to be active and involved in politics, or else we're going to get run over. And you look at the things that we are able to accomplish through politics, whether it be, making sure we keep our collective bargaining rights, making sure that our pension stays funded as a defined benefit pension and we don't get rolled into a 401k. The COVID presumptive language, the different flame retardant bills that we've gotten through, things like that, are really critical to us and our future as an organization and as a profession. So just stepping back and just being like, yeah, we're not going to be involved, just isn't a realistic option at the state level. I think it's important to, live up to that mantra that the IFF, always says, right? We support candidates that support us. And we have to, if we're supporting candidates, we're supporting candidates. And, if I'm fortunate enough to be in this position, regardless of political affiliation, if those candidates or those elected officials are willing to support us, I'm willing to support them. Being part, like opening up the communication and stuff involved in that process involves doing a good screening. If we're screening candidates for governor, we should screen any candidate, reach out to the candidates that are, that are announced, and we should screen them and, make our decision based on where their support for firefighters lies. I know some of the folks I talked to were upset that we had endorsed Walls because, a number of reasons. Realistically, I don't know. I mean, I was part of it when we screened a few of the different candidates. I was part of that. But no Republican candidate screened with us. I don't think Jeff Johnson would have scored real high on our, scale of important issues. And I think, making sure that we at least offer screenings to those candidates, regardless of whether or not we think or how we think they'll answer or how their actions have been in the past, is important to our members. So at least they feel there was an option there. But that being said, I think, we need to be supporting those candidates that support us. It's something that we run into up here in Duluth. Most of the candidates we support are Democrats. Most of the candidates that win here are Democrats. When it comes to city council, most of the candidates that lose are Democrats. Like, we just don't have any viable Republican candidates that really run for office. And those that do either don't want to participate in our screening process, or they participate in our screening process and they want to eliminate taxes completely, things that would completely devastate us as a department. So yeah, we're not going to support those candidates. But I think opening that process up so people feel like and know that it is a fair and open process is going to be important for the future as well. So I know that was one, I kind of made some notes of questions that I've gotten, a few times at different locals and with different local leaders as I've chatted with them. So, but I think that's, nobody likes politics. Locals can get away with, some locals can get away with just not being involved at all. Other locals get pretty heavily involved, each local to their own. I mean, that's kind of what separates or makes us strong as a local, is that local autonomy to make that decision, whether that local wants to get involved in or not. And if a local wants to get involved in politics and hasn't been involved in politics in the past, I'm happy to work with them every step of the way. I have been active in politics up here in Duluth for a number of years. I'm one of those odd folks who actually enjoys politics. I see the amount of benefit that it can do, and when we have good people in there, how big of a difference that it makes. And as importantly, when we have bad people in there, how much damage they can do in a short amount of time. So, any thoughts on that for folks?
Pete, this is Rick again.
Yeah.
From the MPFF side, I think the only time that we really do an organizational endorsement is usually for the governor's position or those top 2 or 3 positions. Everything else still has to go back to the local level, does it not?
That would be my yeah. I mean, it's always been that way when I've managed it, or like when we've had endorsements here, I'd make a recommendation up to the board and then they take it from there. But yeah, I would plan to keep that going. And if the local has a candidate that they are working with and that supports them, yeah, absolutely, we should be supporting those candidates. Yeah, nobody enjoys politics, or not many folks enjoy politics. But it can really make a huge difference for your local if you do get involved. But what we're starting to see up here in Duluth, for years, we were elbows deep in every political race that came up. I mean, we were active and supporting candidates and spending money and knocking doors and doing all that stuff. And we've tapered off of that. But what we've done is we've really increased our community outreach, and building that support in the community through different volunteering, different fundraising things, but also like having a very strong social media presence has been, as important as politics are. Community outreach is politics without the politics. I mean, you're basically generating that support within the community. And then when you are facing something at a city council level or something like that, and you can reach out to the community after you've been building those relationships, and they're the ones who start calling city councilors, it is unbelievably powerful. That's something we dealt with some budget cuts that were threatened back in 2017. There was the mayor wanted to move some money around, which included taking a bunch of money out of our budget to help fund street repairs. And we started putting some pointed posts on social media, and the citizens started kind of catching on to what was happening. The local media started catching on to what was happening. And when it was all said and done, we had council support on a lot of it. But even in talking to one of the counselors, he's like, if you can get constituents to call me or email me and tell me they don't want, us to cut your budget, he's like, that's super helpful. And then I talked to him a couple weeks later, and he's like, okay, you can have them stop now. Like the point has been made. Like he's like, I've got enough emails that say, no, I don't want you cutting the fire department. Find your money elsewhere type of things. And that was all through community engagement and building up those community relationships. And it was super powerful. When that thing all shook out, we didn't lose $1 out of our budget. Every other department in the city had to cut money, and the line item that we had to cut was $0. Everything else came out of reserves. So it's valuable to have that community outreach. And I know a lot of your locals have social media or Facebook pages and Twitter and Instagram and all that stuff. Inver Grove and Paul, I know they've worked with the IFF and the strategic campaigns folks to kind of get their program going, and they're daily they've got stuff they're putting out that is super positive. It's fire department related, but it's positive stuff that engages the community and things like that. That stuff does really well. The negative stuff, or the stuff where you're talking in firefighter speak about different things, it kind of glosses people's eyes over, or they get mad at you. But if you guys save a dog or pull some ducks out of a drain, that shit's gold. And it's, the IFF has a ton of resources available for that and everything else. So, but how many of you guys have done a fire ops before?
Yeah. A few years back before I was president.
Okay. That's another way to build political support without being active in politics. We've been doing fire ops. We had to cancel our fire ops last year, but we've been doing fire ops for every other year since before I got here. So I think we've done close to 9 or 10 of them. And man, it is probably the single most powerful tool to get your message out there to a captive audience of the people who actually make the decisions in your city. We invite the elected officials. We invite the media. We invite business owners. Like, we had some developers that were building. He was building the Pier B and the silos that when you come into Duluth, it's the new fancy hotel on the waterfront down there. And we had him come through it, and we've got him on the evening news coming out of the live burn and peeling his mask off all red-faced, and he's out of breath. And he's just like, give them whatever they want, whatever they need, they should have. I don't know how they do this. Give them whatever they want, and he's a guy who pays a shit ton of money in taxes. And so, we start inviting those folks. We invite different community leaders that we've identified, school administrators, school board, and start building that out. And the support that has generated, the positive support in all their different pockets of our community. So it's not just labor talking about our issues. We've got bankers talking about our issues. We've got business owners. We've got church leaders, different things like that. And one of the things that I'd like to do in the future with, through the MPFF is develop out a Fire Ops 101 resource or something like that. So, if you're in the metro and you can get access to a training facility, that's going to be ideal. But if you're in greater Minnesota and you don't have access to some of that stuff, but let's say you got a training tower and, you got some other stuff, working with our different locals so that no matter where you are in the state, you can host a fire ops in your community. And whether that means rolling up in a trailer and pulling out door props and, setting up a maze drill or something like that, or smoking out an apparatus floor or any number of things. I think that we can start, if we can get more locals to start hosting those, I think it'll pay dividends in the future. And, love to work with any locals who haven't hosted one, but would be interested in hosting one in the future. It's labor intensive. I think we usually try to put about 25 participants through. And in order to make that day successful, we probably have, I'd say, between 35 and 40 of our members out there actively involved, running stations, running food and water back and forth, moving people around, setting up stations, getting everything set up and taken down at the end of the day. But it's well worth it. I mean, there's ways that we can build that support without actually getting into the dirtier side of politics and making those endorsements at the local level. Unfortunately, at the state level, we have to be in the thick of it and making sure that our issues are, not getting shuffled to the bottom of the pile.
Pete, I'm obviously new to this whole thing. Has there ever been any talk about, we're small, like super small. And we're surrounded, I think Egan's got like 38 or 39 or 40 or whatever, and South Metro's got 38, 39, 40, whatever. Has there ever been any work, and again, forgive me if there has, because I'm fairly new here, about locals doing joint fire ops class? So yep. Is there I don't know how to say it, a way to gauge interest out there for other locals that would want to do it jointly, or I mean, like obviously it'd be a tool for us trying to get, people within our community on board of the growth that needs to happen here, and the understanding of why. And if I'm going to be honest, if it was just us, we have a boatload of our part-time people just press ganged into it because we just don't have any more. There's only 5 bodies in our local.
Yeah.
But has there been, and that's not to exclude them if they want to take part. They certainly. I have a bunch of them that are interested in what we do, and a couple of them help me with the social media stuff and other stuff that goes on. But is there an avenue for say we wanted to be part of one? Would there be an avenue for us to get in on that with somebody else and
for sure,
kind of offer that up for in our current state where we don't have the personnel to support it or the facilities necessarily either?
Yeah. So in the past, we did one joint one up here where we did it with Cloquet and we did it with Superior. And we learned some lessons from that. Of those, so we all function differently. Duluth is no ambulances. We're 130 some members. Superior doesn't have ambulances, but they're 20 to 30 members. Cloquet runs the ambulance service. So we all have different priorities. So like when we're talking about staffing and Superior's talking about staffing, it's a completely different conversation. So one of the things that we learned that if we were ever going to host a joint one again was to make sure that we had Duluth people talking to Duluth participants, Superior people talking to Superior, and so on and so forth. So they weren't getting mixed messages where we're being like, yeah, we need 4 more, we need 4-person companies. And Superior's like, well, we would like to have more than 1 rig in the city functioning at a time. Like completely different realms of need, but both, we're all stepping and trying to get to where we need to be. So if I was, in the future, if that's something that we're going to pursue, having these regular quarterly meetings and having, the central district in on that meeting and being like, hey, who else is interested in hosting one of these, and get, some locals that are in your area, geographically would be good. Especially if you can get them matched roughly to size, because some of the geographical stuff will carry over. So if you, whether it be media, whether it be business owners, like, it's not like in Duluth where we're just kind of an island and we don't have any other departments around us. But where we, and how I'd envision something like that is sitting down with the locals that want to do it, and then bringing in people from other locals to help with the legwork side of it. The moving food around, the, setting up and taking down drills, that type of stuff. But then, you guys would just be focused on, the people that came from your area, to talk with them. And then, cause you're talking with them throughout the day, you're talking with them as you're transitioning from stations and you're explaining, okay, here's how we actually run. Here's what we do. We go to more than fires. We do this, we do this, we do this. Here's what our staffing looks like. Here's why it's problematic. And we hammer on staffing, response times, and equipment. If you take any one of those out of the equation, the other 2 falter, and so that's where we take that opportunity to really just hammer on that, so that when we start talking about staffing, they understand what we're talking about. And when they're talking to their neighbors or they're talking to elected officials, it does carry through. It really does. And it's eye-opening. So, there's definitely an avenue to group locals together and work with them and learn from some of the things that we did in the past that were not necessarily as successful. And in the future, we'd be able to make it work for you for sure.
Yeah. And obviously we got a lot bigger fish to fry right now than worrying about that, but it's one of those things that, the need here is to grow, on the full-time side of our department, obviously, and that entails more, members in our union. But so it's obviously very preliminary, just questioning in terms of getting myself oriented to, the possibility of us at some point being part of one of those.
For sure.
And Pete, when we host a convention, I'm not sure about Brooklyn Center or Brooklyn Park this year, but I know like when we were going to be down in Austin, they were every time now we've been trying to host a fire ops wherever we host the convention itself. And we've been seeing really good luck by having MPFF board members there. One of the issues too, and is I think if going forward, if this is going to be kind of the thing that we're going to try to do, you mentioned about having a training facility. Well, you guys are very fortunate having LSC basically in your pocket. And not everybody else has that, but one of the things we actually did help with Austin when they were getting ready is we've got a lot of members who are providers for either the state college system or private vendors, and actually working out deals and partnerships with them to promote their equipment, but by having them actually provide that equipment.
Oh yeah.
Because again, so, a place like Crookston and East Grand doesn't have, a training facility, but being able to bring in trailers and props and everything to kind of run this, and working with our other locals, because I noticed the last couple of years of hosting some of these, the city and the fire chief were opposed to these fire ops and weren't going to let the fire department members, the union members, use any of the equipment. So now you've got a whole other obstacle that you're trying to overcome. So again, building a resource list, I think, would be a nice thing to do statewide, and actually trying to figure out how many of our guys are involved with some type of provider system that could actually, pro bono just provide this equipment.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It'd be nice. I mean, if we were able to build out that fire side of the training as well, and have some of that equipment as part of that we could use in conjunction with fire ops. I think that would work as well it's not going to work for the live burn side of it. But I think a lot of that other stuff we can build out, and, you could drag around in a 16-foot trailer, whether it be door props or, extra sets of turnout gear, things like that over time we'd be able to build up a pretty decent resource where we could roll into East Grand Forks. And even though they don't have, a center, we could set up in a field or a parking lot and still pull off a solid event.
Hey, Damon here, Local 101. I want to jump in on this real quick, kind of recap just all of it. Even to the live fire extent, with the amount of guys that we have that are doing training, and with what we're doing with shipping containers up here, I think we could make all of this portable. And to answer the question of, staffing the event, it doesn't matter who's running the live fire or each different station. The group leaders from each local are the important part of that. And as long as they're married up with the constituents from their area and they're doing all the talking, all the labor intensive stuff is keeping the search drill going and keeping the fire going and restacking the fuel packages. I think if we put thought into this, we could absolutely set up the whole thing and make it mobile all the way to the live fire part of it, and get instructors or members from all over the state to come and staff it for every local, no matter what the size.
I agree, Dan.
And it would be fun.
Yeah. And that's the fire side of it that, like what that fire training side of it. There is a desire. You look at these different guys who run those things. I'm good friends with Brian Brush. I got hired with him when we started out at West Metro back in 2002. And he runs that fire by trade as a side gig, or I think he's still doing some of that, but the last time I talked to him, he's like, I have to turn people away. He's like, they pay for me to fly over. I think he did something in Roseville, didn't he, Cody? Yeah.
Yeah, he was out last summer or the summer before.
Yeah. And he's like, it's just, people want you to come and do it. And if we're able to develop something like that through our organization, I really think it would be a way to get decent training out there to our, not just our members, but, you start delivering it out regional or even further. I think we could get a lot. It would help us build out a lot of the other aspects of what, we could do in the future. there's just on that training aspect, there's just, one more thing here. And then unless anybody else has anything else, but, I saw the IFF has their first virtual PEP offering. Looks like it already filled out and went out, which is great. There's obviously people are willing and they understand the value in something like that. I think in the future, that's something that we could do at the state level as well, but make it specific to our issues. Negotiating a contract in Minnesota is a lot different than negotiating a contract in Indiana or, wherever else you want to look into it. Because we have different rules, because we have different regulations, having a class on negotiations that digs into the Bureau of Mediation Services and how to deal with interest arbitration, how to research and eliminate arbitrators and things like that. A class like that, we could do classes. I talked to Mike Smith from Local 21 about, they've dealt with more line of duty deaths than any other local in our state. About hopefully, talking to him about putting on a class on line of duty death issues, whether it be the benefit side of things or how to handle it, or what calls you need to be making if it's something that happens like catastrophically, or if it's a cancer, job related cancer, and where to start getting your ducks in a row to have that family and that member be more successful in the chance of getting that benefit should they die from that job related disease. And he's willing to work with in all honesty me or Scott to put together some type of resource for our locals, so that if you do get a line of duty death, you're have some idea of where to start and who to talk to. I talked to Cody a little bit about what they're doing with Fill the Boot right now is they're knocking the rest of us out of the water, and how they were able to teach a class on how to reach out to different businesses and what businesses, and have that that business owner from High Pines, the brewery that they're working with, come in and talk about here's what we're looking for, because that's something that we don't always hear. We might partner with a business on something, but it should be a partnership. How can we help them be more successful in their business as they're helping us be more successful in what we're trying to accomplish? So to get that perspective from a business owner who we might go and say, hey, would you like to partner with us on raising money for X, Y, or Z? I think we could put together a pretty solid offering of courses taught by our own in-house professionals, if you will, on issues that are real specific to us here around the state that would benefit our members, regardless of where they're located. Another one that, a lot of our locals have found success and have had really good success with SAFER grants. You look at Egan and they just pick up 18 with the SAFER grant or something like that. And how they were able to get their chief on board. And we've brought it up to our chiefs and they're like, oh, no, we don't want your help. It's like they feel like us helping, they're losing power. And by us not helping, they're not getting the grants. And using that IFF resource to go over our grants and make sure that we're successful in getting them. You work through Tom and you go through, I know, talking to Jake in Egan there, their chief was like, yeah, that'd be great. Or their assistant chief, their deputy chief, or whoever they were working with. And they had the IFF go through their stuff and then email back. And I think, Paul, you said you'd done the exact same thing. You had worked with the IFF on getting your SAFER grant application in. Those are the people that approve the grants. If we don't have them proofreading them, we're wasting our time. So having somebody, from Minnesota who's gone and, I honestly wouldn't be the one to teach that, because if I approached our chiefs about it, it just wouldn't be successful. So having somebody who's found success in working with their administration on being willing to kind of be like, yeah, whatever it takes to get this grant, we're in. So, some classes like that we can develop as needed, even if we're realizing or, seeing some upcoming issues on how we can be successful at some of these things. So I think there's room to grow there. I think that it's something that, pairing that back with bringing back the Minnesota Affiliate Leadership Training Summit, it's something I talked to DVP Thornburg about a little bit, and he suggested I reach out to Jerry Biggert over in Wisconsin, who's kind of runs their educational side for their state association, and had a great conversation with him. And they're able to offer their 3-day waltz for no cost to up to 2 members per local. They do that by getting sponsors and vendors in, and they're able to get big sponsors and vendors in because they use their first day as a human resources day, and they allow any chief from any professional department to come for free. And when they do that, then the vendors are more Pierce or, Globe or whatever, are more willing to spend some money to be a vendor if the chiefs, the ones who are actually kind of controlling the purse strings, are at this thing. And they're able to do that. And then the next 2 days of the course or the conference are all union or, that side of the training, but they're able to front load it with the chiefs to help offset the cost by getting those vendors in. And that's stuff that we can do here. I mean, we have all kinds of, major fire service businesses in or around Minnesota that we could tap into to be part of that. And, with that training, if we can start delivering good training for low or no cost to our locals and be able to hit them no matter the size of their local, no matter where their local is located, not only is it going to benefit our current executive board members, but it's going to help us start offering that training to those, those up and comers or those emergent union leaders, so that we have people who are ready and willing to step into these roles and not feel completely overwhelmed. So.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that a lot of our locals in our state are pretty young and relatively small, just from those part-time paid-on-call departments slowly going full-time around the metro. So not a lot of resources and financial abilities for these locals.
Yeah, that's being able to offer it to them for low or no cost. I mean, I've been super fortunate. We send in Duluth, we send 4 people to ALTS every year. And I've got to go 9 of the last 10 years. And I can promise you, of the however many 60 some odd classes I've taken, there's not a single one of those that couldn't have been taught via this format, where you have somebody give a presentation and then you have questions and answers. It's not as much fun, obviously, than sitting around in a room and then going out for beer and stuff afterwards. But it's a hell of a lot cheaper. So if we can start getting that education out to our locals, no matter their size, no matter their financial situation, it'll pay dividends for all of us in the future. So. Anybody else have anything they want to share real quick?
Pete, I will just say this, as a board member, as the longest serving board member currently on the MPFF, I like the ideas that you are bringing to the table. It's a fresh approach. It's something that I think is and it's not to knock anybody else who's been in these positions in the past. It's just, we kind of got caught up into this is what we do. You're bringing a fresh approach to fresh ideas to the game. And I for one, I really do appreciate it. So I look forward to seeing this come to fruition.
I look forward to working on it.
I agree with Rick. What he said, I back that 100% too, Pete. You bring in a fresh way of doing things. And Paul, this goes to you and anybody else out there. And I tell my guys, this is damn near every day. It's all about the delivery. If you're working with your administrator, your fire chief, whether you like them or not, it's all about the delivery. I was fortunate enough, we're getting ready to lose our administrator. I was fortunate enough that our fire chief had 10 years of being a union president, so he kind of knew how far he could go, what he could and couldn't do. But maybe I was spoiled for a while there. We'll see what happens in the future. I may be up here in 6 months crying and saying help me, but literally it's all in delivery. I went up when our administrator was new, and was new to it. And I told him, I'm not going to come into your office and pound my fist on your desk, and I don't expect the same from you. And we're going to agree on things. We're going to disagree on things, but at the end of the day, let's make this work. You know, you want something, I want something. There's always room to meet in the middle. You know, it doesn't always have to be a fight, but you know, hopefully common sense prevails.
You scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Yep. And so far it's worked. Like I said, unfortunately he's taken another job, and we'll see what the next administrator has to say.
Yeah, it generally takes a little while to train them in.
I'm probably looking at a year of nothing really happening, but we'll see.
Yeah, new chiefs and new administrators can be tough.
Yep. And Paul, my heart goes out to you, man. You're enough, and if there's anything we can do to help, let us know. You'll do it.
Appreciate it.
You'll get her done. I know you will. We've talked before.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's one thing, you know, just for everybody. You know, I sent something out last fall, you know, about staffing and things like that. You know, that was at the behest of my fire chief. I complain a lot, but my fire chief's actually pretty good. She was very receptive to the safer stuff and getting support on that. I mean, when they you know, when it is one of those, you know, you scratch our back type of things, but at the behest of, you know, her, I sent that email out, and I was really like surprised and appreciative of the response I got from, you know, all sorts of locals, big, small. I know I had, you know, Jim, we had a conversation on the phone, and I talked to Metro on the phone. I got dozens of emails from everybody, you know, about this, that, or the other thing to help us out. So just as a new local, I don't know if we're still the newest one in Minnesota or not. We're collectively appreciative of the support we've had, you know, from the MPFF and the IFF through our growing pains and, you know, all that. So thank you from us to everybody. So
You got a great group of guys here to work from, guys and gals. And I mean, I couldn't have done it without Rick and Pete and Chad. And there's a wealth of information out there and a wealth of knowledge. I constantly, I think I'm on the right track, but you better set me straight before I start opening my mouth when I go to City Hall. I just want to make sure I got things under control. You know, use us. We're all there, each and every one of us.
I appreciate that.
Right on. Well, I think this type of communication will help ensure and just make sure that we are, you know, if we keep doing this into the future, that we're meeting the needs and all of our members' voices are getting heard. I think that's super important for our organization at the local level, at the state level, at the international level. We're a right to work country now when it comes to public employees. As a local, if one of our members doesn't feel like we're meeting their needs, they can drop out, not pay any dues, and you know that starts to snowball. That has a catastrophic effect. The same thing goes at the state level. If our locals don't feel like we're listening to them and we're not meeting their needs, and you know we're blowing them off, we'll lose them. And the more locals we lose, the harder it is for us to be successful. It goes all the way up to the international. And making sure that as a state union, that we're member focused and member driven, is going to make sure that we're regularly, you know, meeting the needs of our members, and you know they feel like there's a value in being part of this organization. So I do really appreciate everybody who took the time to out of their night to come and have this conversation. If anything comes up that I can help any of you with or any of your members with, please don't hesitate to ask. Everybody here, guess and feels the same way. Like, I know making that phone call is always going to be the hard part, but everybody's happy to start having that conversation. We all like to talk about fighting administration and, you know, figuring out how to have those battles. So as far as we're going to do some prizes, but I've had some people come on and some people come off. But if I understand right, it's this recorded, so I'll be able to get a record of it. And I'll just print them off, and I'll do a random number drawing for the winners of the prizes. So just so you guys can get a look at it, the first prize, or a prize, is that. It's a steel cutout on a hose backboard, if you will, wall hanging thing. And then the other one, I'll reach out to whoever wins it, but is a radio strap that I make them at the fire station when guys need them. And I just need to get some measurements from you, and I'll put one together and stamp whatever you want on it and paint it up, or whatever you need done on it, and get it sent out. But I want to make sure that everybody who was here and had to jump off for whatever reason still gets entered in and has a chance at them. So if anybody has anything else, let me know, or else we'll call it an end here. And my hope is to have a couple more of these over the next few months leading up to the convention. If I haven't met with your local yet, I'm going to probably be in touch with you here in the next few days or next week or so, and try and get something on the books. And, you know, whatever works for you guys. If you guys are meeting in person, I'll be there in person. If you guys are still meeting virtually, we can do that. Just let me know what works best for you and your members, and we'll make it happen. So, anybody have anything for me? All right. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Pete. Pete.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Pete.
You bet.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah. We'll talk to you soon.